as is.
A motion to adopt. That's good.
Mike motions to adopt. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Stefan seconds. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say the same. Ayes have it 4-0. Okay, so moving along. New business. Oh, shoot, we actually gotta look through the meeting minutes from, if you can remember, last year, December 5th. We want to look through those meeting minutes to make any adjustments as we feel we need, or, again, approve those meeting minutes and continue moving on.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from December 5th.
Okay, Stefan makes a motion to approve. Can I get a second?
Second.
Adam seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say the same. Hearing none, ayes have it 4-0. All right, so that brings us to part one of why we are here, new business, quick trip site plan, CUP, plat. Mark, why don't you take it away?
We're good. Honorable Chair, Commissioners, first item on the agenda tonight is a request for site plan review, a conditional use permit, preliminary and final plat to allow the construction of a new convenience retail store, fuel station, car wash, and associated site improvements for the property located on Gateway Boulevard, and will be created as a part of the preliminary and final plat. Some of you remember the platting that took place when we broke up the old MPFC property, which used to be a fairly large piece of property to accommodate the redevelopment and then development of the Cassia building. When that happened, the city worked with the owner of that property to plat several outlots that were platted as outlots such in a manner so that they could be subdivided in the future, not knowing exactly what shape or size those properties might take. And so tonight we have an applicant, Quick Trip, who is coming before the city wanting to build a new convenience store with a fuel station and car wash. And in order to do that, they would be subdividing the property that's shown on the screen into two parcels. One would be for the new store and would then be addressed Gateway Boulevard, and the second would remain as a outlot, outlot A, for the parking and some of the other improvements associated with that retail center that's adjacent to the west. This property that we're looking at is currently zoned mixed-use gateway, and it's guided by the city's comprehensive plan as mixed use, and it's approximately 2.5 acres in overall size. The city's been working on the development of this property for some time. We've had conversations for several years with this applicant, working on trying to find a suitable location within Maple Plain to locate the proposed use. They landed on this site and were able to secure a purchase agreement to purchase the designated property and construct a 9,000 square foot or approximately 9,000 square foot convenience store building along with a approximately 1,800 square foot car wash on the property. And so with that, the city walked through the process, including what approvals were required to go through by the applicant in order to accommodate what they are looking to do. And we did our typical detailed site plan review as it relates to all of the various site improvements being proposed, and I'll walk through that. And then building architecture. And in this particular case, the applicant also submitted a full sign package and is looking for consideration relating to their sign package as a part of their request tonight. So I'll walk through those various components. As it relates to the site plan review, the city did a detailed site plan review and has been going back and forth with the applicant relating to various aspects of the site plan. with the proposed site plan that was being provided by the applicant, they've identified all of the various components associated with the convenience store, the car wash, the parking, and then all of the pieces that kind of go along with that. In our review, we looked at the plans. One of the things we look at up front is how does the proposed use fit into the ordinance as it relates to parking. We noted that the parking area would consist of 57 off-street parking spaces, and we broke that down in the ordinance into several categories: motor fuel station, convenience store, and car wash. And we identified a need for approximately 42 spaces based on the city's ordinance pertaining to those individual uses. The applicant noted with the convenience store, they have fixed parking on both the east and west sides, and then they also have some additional parking west of the fuel station canopy, or the fuel canopy. And then with fuel stations, we also look at and count actual spaces in front of the fuel pumps because that's part of the use. And so with that, they are proposing 57 parking spaces on this site. We also looked at how the building would relate to building setbacks, circulation around the site, sidewalks, things of that nature. And one of the things we noted is the applicant is proposing the store to be located in the northeast corner of the property with 2 access points onto Gateway. One of those access points was somewhat of a fixed point by the city in that it aligns with the Cassia development directly north or across the street. And then the second access point is being proposed by the applicant further west, leaving in place what was once a placeholder for a bus drop-off and some associated park and ride parking that was designated on Gateway Boulevard for a future use. With that, the proposed station store in the northeast corner has the main access facing west, and you can see that on the site plan. Oh, let's see if it.
Take no responsibility.
All right, let's.
As you can clearly see.
Yeah, it's getting better. Well, let's see here. I don't know. You think it will come into focus, or?
Try disconnecting it, closing it, and resharing.
Okay, let's try that. Sorry.
There you go.
Oh, there.
There it is.
Oh, don't touch it. Okay. See if we can zoom in there. There it goes. Okay. Front entrance to the site is right in this location here. It is on the west side facing west. They have a loading delivery area or a loading dock on the south side of the building. They have additional parking on the east side of the building, along with a dumpster enclosure that's shown here in the south east corner. The fuel canopy and the fuel pumps are located kind of central to the site. And then you can see there's some additional parking that's located just to the west of that. And then the car wash on the far west side of the site. So with that, the applicant's building, we reviewed it for setbacks, noting that all setbacks proposed meet applicable setbacks for both parking and for the building setbacks. We also noted that all the parking spaces meet all of the minimum required parking space dimensional standards that are outlined by the city. We looked at the layout and kind of circulation of the site, both from a user standpoint, so just a typical customer perspective, and then also from a fire apparatus and emergency vehicle movement. And the applicant provided a diagram that shows how a fire apparatus can move through that site, making all the turns that are required. One of the things that we commented on with site circulation pertained then to the car wash. And we noted that in the drawing, we do anticipate that there will be some stacking associated with the car wash. And we asked the applicant to consider striping and then signing a stacking area for those times when the car wash might have more traffic. And so the applicant has revised the plans to show, and I'll show you on the next, kind of that blue area as a designated area for stacking associated with a car wash. We also reviewed the plans from a landscape and lighting perspective. The applicant provided full landscape and lighting plans to the city. I'm going to scroll to those, try not to look until I get there because you'll get maybe some motion sickness. With the landscape plan, the applicant showing landscaping around the site perimeter, also some interior landscaping to the landscape islands that are proposed in the parking area, and then tying into some of the gateway planting that already exists. They are preserving a couple of the trees along Gateway Boulevard. We made some comments in general relating to the landscape to add a deciduous tree along the Gateway Boulevard just in one area. And then also just noted that the landscape out along Gateway Boulevard just to try to maintain some consistency with what was already planned in that location. But outside of that, for the most part, what was proposed by the applicant seemed to adequately screen some of the areas between the existing bar to the south and the proposed use on this site, as well as provide some additional landscaping around the stormwater pond and then around the west side of the car wash. City also looked at police fire. In addition to the fire apparatus circulation, we did ask the applicant to locate an additional fire hydrant along Gateway Boulevard. That was a request of the fire department in order to be able to adequately respond to fire and how they would anticipate attacking a fire in this particular location. And then we also reviewed the plans as related to stormwater management, grading, and drainage. We had a couple of comments. Ultimately, they'll have to get Minnehaha Creek watershed approval, but they are proposing a new stormwater pond that would be located on the west side of the site in this location. That stormwater pond would take care of and accommodate all of the runoff and retention and quality requirements that are in place. And we did review those plans and felt that that pond was sized adequately based on the stormwater report and the additional information that was provided by the applicant. I noted that we reviewed lighting. The applicant did provide full photometric plans. We did comment on those photometric plans for the most part. They met all applicable requirements. We did ask the applicant for some cut sheets, which we did get, and we noted that there was just one area along Gateway Boulevard where they had a measure of lightness that was greater than the city's 1 foot candle, but it was really minor, and it's something that they were going to revise on the revised plans. The images that are shown kind of just give you a high level illumination diagram, which just shows generally where the light poles are located, and then how the lighting would be from a nighttime perspective. You can also see canopy lighting underneath the canopy, and then building lighting on the proposed building. So a couple of things to consider. I noted the preliminary plat at the front of the conversation. The applicant is proposing to split the lot into 2 lots that are shown, block 1, lot 1, or lot 1, block 1, which would be the parcel that they would acquire, and then the remainder parcel outlot A. Because of the simplicity of this, we are asking to process it as both a preliminary and final plat rather than have it broken down into 2 parts. That is something we have done for a simple subdivision like this in the past, noting that the applicant is wanting to plat this property, replat this property, not just do it through a meets and bounds or other type description. The other piece that I talked about is the conditional use permit. And so there are a couple factors to the conditional use permits being asked by the applicant. One relates to car wash and fuel station. In the mixed use gateway zoning district, car washes and fuel stations are conditional use permit. And so we have criteria established for conditional use permit. In the ordinance, the applicant is proposing that they meet all applicable criteria of the conditional use permit, but that it's a step that we would have to make that finding as well. The city had historically found that this property was suitable for convenience services goods due to its highway visibility and just general location on in proximity to Baker Park and then Highway 12. And then the car wash itself, I mean, this is something we've actually looked at a couple of different times on this particular property. The owner, the former operator, I should say, of the MPFC at one time had come forward with a car wash proposal to the city, and it was found to be acceptable. They never moved forward with that proposal, but it is something that we have historically looked at. And then kind of lastly, in terms of our site and building plan review, we looked at the building architecture associated with the building. It was noted that the applicant has kind of on the west or front facade of that building, they are right in line with the applicable requirements relating to fenestration and openings. And then as it relates to building materials, they're proposing essentially 100% brick building with their kind of branded green metal roof. And so we would need to find that it meets the design criteria that we have established in the design guidelines. Based on our initial review of the plans, it exceeds the design criteria of the guidelines, but would be something that we can talk about any of the details pertaining to that. They had also same architecture on the proposed car wash, so kind of their it's kind of their branded architecture. They also provided that with the trash enclosure. I noted that in the report. Trash enclosure would again meet applicable requirements. There's elevations of the proposed canopy and what the fuel canopy would look like that they provided. The city has noted fuel canopies. We define fuel canopies, but we don't overall talk about fuel canopies in our ordinance in terms of design. We don't really differentiate or distinguish that, and so we don't have a lot of direction. But because of the nature of the fuel station, we have latitude in what we look at or require as it relates to that. And then the last piece of this, which also falls then under a conditional use permit, is the sign package. And so the applicant prepared a full sign package. There are a couple aspects of the sign package that I broke down in the report. It's primarily related to the electronic message signs. The applicant is proposing to have a freestanding sign, a pylon sign, canopy signs, and then wall signs, along with some internal site signs. And so they have a freestanding sign, which would be located on the northeast corner of the site in that location. They have a pylon sign that would be located on the southwest corner of the site on the Highway 12 side. And then they have signage on the walls of the proposed building. I'll just walk through those and as it relates to the request. So on the building itself, on the west elevation and on the north elevation, they are proposing their logo name signage above the front door, and then as well as in the canopy or the gable on the opposite side. Those wall signs that are being proposed have a maximum area of 10% of the individual wall on which they are located. In this particular case, they're well below the size that's allotted for each of the various walls which they're proposing those signs to be located. You can see on the east elevation as well where they're locating that. Also wall signs on the car wash that just designate car wash. Then they have the motor canopy or the fuel canopy signage package that's being proposed. They have a brand that they are trying to put on this canopy, which would be the individual LED letters along with the lit LED stripe that goes around the entirety of the canopy perimeter. And so you can see on the long sides of the canopy, they're proposing the Quick Trip letters. And then on the short, on one of the short facing sides, the outside side of the west side, they're proposing the Quick Trip letters. I noted as it related to those canopy signs, the applicant is proposing internally lit LED. And I noted in the ordinance what we talk about as it relates to the MUG zoning district, and that is one of the areas that they're asking for the conditional use permit is to allow signs that would either vary from, exceed, or change the requirements of the underlying sign district. And so I'll talk a little bit more about that with the overall sign package. The two signs that are their kind of primary freestanding and pylon signs are shown here. The freestanding sign on the top is the what we would call like a monument sign. It's located on Baker Park, kind of directly across from the Holiday Station and right out in front. They are proposing a changeable copy or a electronic messaging sign. I noted in the write-up that we prepared or our report that as it relates to freestanding signs, the city does allow electronic message signs, but we state that electronic message signs shall occupy no more than 25% of the total sign area. So the applicant is asking that that provision be increased to allow an electronic message sign that fits within the overall square footage, but would exceed the 25% parameter as it relates to the electronic message piece. This particular sign would be 13 feet in height and 75 feet in sign area, and the ordinance would allow 20 feet in height and 80 square feet in sign area per side. So you can see that overall they're underneath the requirement, but they don't meet the 25% provision. And then this sign is the pylon sign. This would be located on the Highway 12 side. I noted the exact same criteria as it related to this. The city allows a pylon sign for a gas station to be a maximum of 64 square feet with a maximum height of 30. And the applicant is proposing a 20-foot tall pylon sign that has 63 square feet of sign area. So with that, again, they are underneath the overall requirements, but again, they exceed the 25% as it relates to the electronic portion of the sign. So with that, there was a couple other things that I noted in the report. I'm just going to go back to the kind of the overall site plan just to talk off of that. It doesn't fritz out on me again. Let's see, maybe like this one. I noted that the plat for the development does require Hennepin County and MnDOT approval. We're not asking for access. That would be changed. So that's in the process. I'm waiting for their comments. It would obviously have to be approved as any kind of it would be subject, or any kind of approval the city would grant would be subject to their approval. The applicant, I did note the applicant is proposing storage, outdoor storage between the fuel pumps. I just noted that we might want to just have some condition in any kind of a consideration that we would make for approval if we were to make that shows that just talks about just that area and maybe describes kind of length of storage or length of display and then condition of storage, so it doesn't become something that, you know, if it's like bags of salt and they're leaking all over the place or something, that there's some language that we would include that just says they would maintain those areas to be neat and clean, and they would change them out on some sort of an interval. And we would talk to the applicant more about what that might look like in terms of just having a condition. But I wanted to note that that's shown and being considered for those areas in between the pumps. And then the last thing I noted is in the report, right now, if you look, there is not a pedestrian connection to the site from the public sidewalk. And there are challenges there because of the grades in those areas. And the applicant has been working with the city to try to determine a location where we could get an accessible sidewalk, not just a sidewalk. And we've gone back and forth, and they've been wanting to work with us to try to come to a resolution. I'm confident we can do that. Our engineer and their engineer are actually going back and forth a couple of different times on possible solutions. But most likely what we're going to end up with is some sort of a connection right in this area that might follow the back of curb, and then get us to be able to get up to the crosswalk there so that we can tie this site into the rest of the site. So there's a lot more detail in the report. I can go into as much detail or as little detail as the Planning Commission wants, and I'm happy to do that. I would note that we do have a public hearing, and the applicant's here tonight, and I know the applicant does have to go to another meeting, so if we could give him maybe a chance to talk to the group, that might be good, because I know he's got to go. So.
Yeah, with that, I think I need a motion to open the public forum.
Motion made.
Mike makes the motion. Do I get a second?
I'll second the motion.
Adam seconds the motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say the same. Hearing none, ayes have it 4-0. So we are now opening the floor to the community for public comments. The time is approximately 6:30 p.m. And just note, please be aware, we are welcome to your input. Each speaker will have about 3 minutes to share their comments. Please state your name and address for the record before speaking.
So name is Dean George, address is 1626 Oak Street, La Crosse, Wisconsin. I'm on behalf of Quick Trip. We are excited about this site. I will say that we have been working with the city of Maple Plain probably for 6 or so years now. This is one of the tightest sites we've put together width-wise. As you might notice, there's only 4 rows of fuel pumps. Our standard layout has 5 to accommodate 20 cars underneath. That's due to the width of the site. We first landed on this site probably 5 or so years ago, but we wanted to add a separate canopy for diesel fuel, which required us to find a much bigger solution. Every time we kicked around new ideas in the city of Maple Plain, we always landed on they're not as good as this site. And then we heard some feedback from the community members that what would be really important that we can provide is fresh grocery, fresh food, hot food, those types of items. So it took a little bit of convincing back at the office to dump the diesel fuel, but everyone is convinced that this site is going to be fantastic. So we're trying to push to get it constructed this summer. It's hopefully to have a midsummer start for construction, which is generally pretty fast. I know we have some state kitchen and plumbing review to get through still, but that's our timeline, hoping to be open within the next 8 months or so. Our engineer, Emily Kronebusch Hellwig, is here. She's on a majority of my jobs up in the Twin Cities metro area. She's our engineering project manager. She can answer any specific questions you have, and I can answer anything really quick before I have to run if there's anything I can quickly answer.
Does the council have any?
I guess I will say one thing on the parking. A lot of the parking you see in the rear of the store is during peak times. We'll have probably between 8 and 12 employees of our own, which is why it's sometimes overparked, which is why we wanted that parking back there. So the goal is to hopefully not have people driving around the back of the store to see if there's a parking space. That's generally going to be our employees back there is the hope. Thank you.
Commissioners, any questions?
Dean, I guess a question, a statement. Quick Trip just does an awesome job. From a training standpoint and all the way through, you do what you say you're gonna do. It sounds like the items that are left there can be worked out and dealt with, crosswalks and those kinds of things.
Absolutely.
It's exciting.
Thank you. Appreciate the kind words, Mike.
Any other questions? For
Just
Dean?
a general comment, I think the plan that you've submitted looks to be very, very complete, and don't have any major concerns. I would would like to echo, I guess, on this minor point of the connection to the sidewalk. I hope that that can happen. I think it's important to connect the sidewalks and the trails throughout the city to the site. And it looks like a good project, and if this is all approved, I think it'll be a great addition to the city.
Thank you.
Anything else for Dean? All right, thank you, Dean. Is there any other comments related to Quick Trip that the
I had-
audience would like to mention?
I didn't sign that in for this stuff.
Jacob, is that a? No? Okay, all right. Since we don't have any additional signatories related to this topic, I need a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Okay, Mike motions. I need a second.
I'll second the motion.
Adam seconds the motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say the same. Ayes have it 4-0. The public hearing is closed, and it is 6:34 p.m. All right, Commissioners, so any other discussion that we have related to this, or comments, or
I have a
questions?
question for Mark. So the electronic sign, the ordinance calls for 25% of the sign. You said it was slightly larger than that. Do you have a percentage of what it is?
It's quite a bit larger, so it's over 50%
Over 50%?
of the sign area. And, our ordinance for everyone's ordinance for electronic message signs probably dates back to like 3 generations of technology ago. I mean, it's just the reality that technology has continued to change relating to electronic message signs. And so they're becoming more and more prevalent, obviously, and our ordinance is probably less and less applicable. With that said, I would note, in our mixed-use business district, our mixed-use Bud Avenue, our mixed-use downtown mixed-use Bud Avenue, I mean, I think that percentage is probably still better than if we were to just say it's open. This is unique use to the city. We don't have a retail tenant that relies on highway visibility to the extent that this does. The other thing that we've talked to the applicant about, and at least should be noted, whether or not you take it into consideration, this site was a challenge because there's a business that is on the corner in front of this site. So we really, everybody talked about this site. We've been trying for many years to try to attract a tenant, but one of the issues we always run into is visibility. And they go, well, there's something in front of us that's a big deal because we need visibility because our business relies on it. And so when they submitted the sign package, that was one of the things they noted was, this is probably as robust a sign package as we could put together because we're trying to go around the building that's in front of us. And so I would just note that, with the canopy, with the freestanding and the pylon sign, those are both permitted signs. If you look at the electronic message part of these signs, I mean, it's greater than, 50% of the sign area in both cases. But, with just what they do, the gas pricing, the advertising that they have because of the retail side of it, I don't know that it's outside of what would be the right percentage.
The 50%, does that include the Quick Trip part of that?
No, the Quick Trip is its own panel, LED, that's not. And same with the pylon. If you look at the pylon again, the electronic message piece on this one is obviously even bigger because it's really this whole thing.
Okay. I think kind of the intent of the electronic sign is more of the billboard
Correct.
display, video type of part of the sign. It looks to me, if you just look at the, how do you pronounce that? Karuba Coffee looks to be about 25% of the sign.
That's correct. Yeah. I mean, it's right at about 25, that Karuba bottom piece. And in this one, the top is, more like in the 15% range.
I would agree. I think the intent is like that portion of the sign is what's
That's
the
cheap.
video.
Yeah,
sign,
right. And not to be, a distraction to drivers, right? So,
And we do have all of they would have to comply with all of our electronic message sign provisions, and they're proposing to do that, which requires length of a message to be, it's regulated, right? So the length of the message, it can't be flashing, it can't be blinking, it's got a certain length that a message has to remain on the screen before it can change. All of those provisions would apply. Really, the exception that we're making is twofold. One is we're kind of confirming the internal illumination, and then they're asking for the exception to the 25%. The sign areas that they're proposing, the signs that they're proposing are all within the guidelines and meet the applicable requirements.
Yes, I've got one other question. For the monument sign, have they done any studies to make sure that it's not gonna block the view pulling out onto
Well,
19?
so it meets our setback from the right of way, and that's kind of our parameter. So I'll just go to highlight it. So if you look at kind of where that turn is here,
Yeah, it's pretty far back.
this sign is so our setback's 10 from the right of way, and they're beyond that.
Okay.
So even though it's 13 feet high, it's really about 40 feet. And we looked at it even because we know that road intersection is going to blow out a little bit more, but they're still well outside that setback. So I think it's a really good point. But I do think that where they're proposing the location would be outside of any kind of a sight line or sight triangle.
Okay.
is there any opportunity to make a sidewalk connection at this end, right near the sign? Is that where the grading issue is?
Yeah, I mean, I think you could potentially also look at getting a sidewalk over to here, but there are some grade challenges, making that connection to try to make that work. And so, from our standpoint, we were talking about, we asked them, I'm getting ahead of we asked them, I don't know what that is. Hold on.
That's the
All right, here we go.
rock construction entrance.
Yeah, I guess. So we asked them to put a crosswalk in across the sidewalk, which is like it would be angled right there.
Yeah.
And then we just think that's probably the most common place that people would try to walk into the site, especially with the building across the street. And then if you're coming from the retail buildings down the street, or if you're coming from the neighborhood to the north along Baker Park, where we already have the trail. But either way, we're trying to get just a singular connection into that site, but trying to get it closer to the front door was what our intent
Yeah,
was. So.
I think that's probably the most important spot, but if it can be done on the east end, that's where across the street, we have the trail that goes north, and it would
trail.
eventually connect to the park. And
Yeah,
there's
right
also
here.
people that do go through the
camping up there,
underpass, under the railroad. It would be coming in from that way as well.
Our intent, and I think the applicants said that they would try to work with us to get it, and I think we're close, actually. Their engineer and our engineer, I think, are speaking the same language about getting that to work. And we talked about we could put in a sidewalk that has a step in it or steps but that kind of defeats the purpose. And I think just given the use around that, especially right across the street, having an accessible connection would be the preferred. And so that's what we're trying to do. And it's a little challenging because this site is tight, and we've got to work through these grades, but I think we're close. So.
How do we feel about varying from the internally lit signs for this project?
Sign application hasn't been started, have we? Or-
No, in this case, they submitted the full sign package, which a lot of times they're not submitted at the time of site plan. And so we bring back, or we'd have to come back. They submitted, so we're actually considering the sign package in this particular case. I noted in the ordinance, we've gone around on this internally illuminated. I will note in the design guidelines, if anybody went back and read them, they've been around for a long time. But if you look at the language that we have pertaining to internally illuminated, we say that It's strongly, just trying to see, I thought I had it labeled in here. It's strongly encouraged. We do have a little bit of room. That language is really only in the mixed use gateway. So when we talk about going back to mixed use downtown or mixed use bud, I think the intent was always that this is the highway kind of district, and then everything else kind of becomes the Main Street district or the downtown district. And I do think there's some differentiation. I would note that this use is just completely unique to the city, and our chances of getting another, convenience fuel station user is not great. And so I just don't know that we'd be setting ourselves up for a certain precedent. I would note the retail building is already has some, internally illuminated signs on it. And then we've got some backlit signs as you keep going further towards the downtown. I think we're going to have to revisit our sign ordinance at some point again. So I don't know. I don't know where we draw that line. This is such a unique use for us, and it's something that the city's been trying to attract for many years, and so trying to work with them a little bit on their signage. When I looked at it, yeah, it's outside of what we've looked at before, but it's also a use that we haven't seen before. So
I think the sign ordinance is something that we're just gonna have to independently work on to make it
Correct.
happen. We've already kind of gone beyond that, right? I mean, we are doing internally led, and I agree, this is a unique location and a unique addition to the community a little bit, but we need to go back and get that cleaned up.
yeah.
Well, any other comments or questions for Mark or? Otherwise, yep.
I'll make a motion to recommend the Quick Trip site plan CUP plat application for approval with the continued working or comments from the city to work through the ADA.
And if I could share,
Yep, please.
I would just note, I think it's appropriate, and I think the applicant knows the recommendation would include a recommendation to provide that pedestrian connection. It's in here. It's
Yeah.
not specific, but I know we've talked about it. I think it would be appropriate that we just recommend it, and council gets to.
You also made a comment about recommending that the outdoor storage that's out under the canopy have some conditions as well, and I would agree with that,
Yeah.
to add that as well.
And are they also looking for a variance on the sign?
It's not a variance, it's the conditional use permit. So our ordinance allows, the signs is separate, and we allow the expansion or change in standard through conditional use permit, not through variance, so. Yeah.
Yeah.
So does that
Okay.
need to be part of the motion?
It was,
Yeah.
yeah.
Do we need to restate that or? Okay.
Okay, so I have a motion from Adam to approve the Quick Trip application for fuel stations and car wash along with the platting, with the conditions as mentioned by the city, along with noting that we make a connection to the city sidewalk, as well as approval of the conditional use permit for the signage. So I have that motion from Adam.
I'll second.
I have a second from Stefan. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say the same. Ayes have it 4-0.
This item will go. This item will go before the city council on March 24th. 4th. There you go.
Do we need a motion on that? Do we need a motion on that? A break? No, you can just recess the meeting. All right, so at this time, we're gonna just take a stretch break to recess for 5 minutes so that we can just, we'll get started on our next agenda topic here. Okay, so the second item of new business is Comfort Haven. The request by Comfort Haven LLC for a conditional use permit and site plan review to allow the reuse of the existing building as assisted living care facility on the property located at 1520 Wyman Avenue. Once again, Mark, I'll let you take it away and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Honorable Chair and Commissioners. Second item in front of you tonight is a request by Comfort Haven LLC for conditional use permit and site plan review to allow the reuse of the existing building as an assisted care living facility on the property at 1520 Wyman Avenue. The applicants approached the city about the possibility of reusing the existing facility and bringing in an assisted living care facility with a memory care component. And it was then discussed that in 2024, the city amended its ordinance to provide for assisted living facilities specifically in the R1 zoning district as a conditional use. And so with that, the city has the ability to consider a conditional use as long as the site meets all applicable requirements for assisted living facility. And then there is a provision also within the ordinance that allows the city to consider with a assisted living facility as an accessory use, the city council can grant approval of a memory care component. This site is zoned R1 single family residential. It's guided by the city's comprehensive plan as low density residential. It's approximately 3.5 acres in overall size, made up amongst the north and south parcel. The previous owner of the site, which is now named Cassia, has been looking to do something with the site since they built their new building in Maple Plain on the Gateway Boulevard and Baker Park Road property several years ago. And with the current use or the existing building that remains, there is no grandfathered use of that facility any longer. It's just a vacant site that would have to go through any kind of an approval process that the city has in place in order to reuse that particular facility. So with that, the applicant is proposing the reuse of the facility, which would convert that building into 39 assisted living units and 22 memory care units. The building itself is approximately 45,000 square feet and historically had been used as approximately 69 bed spaces in 4 different wings of the building, which also includes a reception area, some office space, a chapel, and a kitchen area. The applicant's proposal would include the reconfiguration of some of the interior portions of the building, security upgrades, mechanical modifications and upgrades, and then interior cosmetic changes. And then the applicant is also proposing exterior renovations, including painting, tuck point, re-siding, and then reconfiguration of the existing parking lot on the east side of the building, as well as the construction of a new parking area on the south side of the building with an ingress-egress that would create a looped drive that would connect both to Bryant and Wyman on the west side of the building. The applicant has also just proposed some general site-related improvements, which would include a new fence, cleanup of some of the areas that are existing around the perimeter of the building, as well as some modifications to the outdoor spaces and some additional landscaping. In the city's ordinance, we have standards for consideration for granting a conditional use permit, which are noted in the report. I won't go into all the criteria. I know the planning commissioner is familiar. We can talk through those. So with that, we do a detailed site plan review relating to the various components that are being proposed to be either renovated, as well as we look at the use that's being proposed and how that ties into or fits into the applicable requirements of the city's ordinances. And so with that, we looked at a couple of things. One was the exterior of the building. The building and building architecture. The applicant is proposing a kind of refresh of the exterior of the building, which would include paint, siding, changing the color of the brick, and kind of a full onslaught of updates to the exterior portions of the building. They provided details in the plan set that show in more detail the color palette, the material palette, and then kind of a detailed breakdown of the improvements that are being proposed. And they provided the city with some additional building elevations that highlights that. You can see the exterior materials, you can see the existing condition of the building, and then the changes in how those would be made. But they are proposing kind of a full working of the exterior of the building, either through materials, siding, paint, or combination. And then they provided that materials board or that palette as well. You can see that they're looking at more earth tone colors with the staining of the existing brick, and then the LP Smart siding or the metal lap siding that's being proposed, and then some of the tuck pointing with the CMU blocks. The city also reviewed then in kind of its full review the site plan and how the existing site would be modified based on the proposed use. And one of the things that is unique to any other proposal we've seen on this site is that the applicant's proposing to create a full looped road around the south and east sides of the building. In doing that, they would be adding some additional parking spaces to the south side of the building, which would allow them to increase the setback of the existing parking to the east property line. You can see that, let's see, in this area here, they're actually going to be cutting out parking area. It doesn't want to comply with my command, but right where my cursor is, you can see that they are creating approximately 10 feet of separation or green space by pulling that parking lot back, eliminating the perpendicular parking spaces, creating some parallel parking spaces. In order to do that, they are shifting the parking that they would have had in that location down to this new lot, and then creating a flow that goes all the way through the site. That was in response to comments that were made by the city previously relating to the kind of dead end nature of that eastern parking lot, some of the problems and congestion that caused, as well as some of the noise that caused up against the adjacent residential properties. So with that change in the parking layout, we did look at the overall parking requirements related to 22 memory care units, as well as 39 assisted care or assisted living units. We noted that the proposed use would require 60 parking spaces. That includes the spaces for the two uses, as well as an overlap requirement as it relates to staffing on this particular site. That information was provided by the applicant and reviewed, and seems like it's in line with what would be used on that particular site. So total of 60 spaces required. The applicant has proposed 61 parking spaces. That includes the new spaces to the south, the reconfigured spaces to the east, as well as the spaces that are located along Wyman in the front, kind of pull up, drop off or entrance area. We noted that the applicant is also proposing to essentially mill and overlay or reclaim the bituminous parking lot on the east, and then overlay that, and that would then tie into the new parking lot that would be bituminous on the south and connected to that. And then they would be proposing also to restripe the parking spaces, which is one of the issues that we had talked about in some of the previous proposals in front of the city. We also looked at lighting on the particular site. We noted that all lighting would need to be brought into compliance with all applicable standards of the city. The applicant is proposing a full lighting plan. One of the issues with the parking lot being located on the east side of the building that we've had in the past is that it was difficult for any applicant to achieve the level of lighting standard that we have up against residential property. That standard says that the maximum number of foot candles, which is the intensity of the light, on the property cannot exceed 0.5 foot candles at the property line. Because they're pulling that parking back and then shifting those lights further west along the line of the parking, they were able to reduce the foot candles and actually provide a plan that was in compliance with the standards for lighting. They also provided cut sheets for all of the building lighting and the parking lot lighting that's proposed. All of the lighting would meet our standards and be full cutoff type light fixtures. That includes the building emergency lighting or the light, any of the lighting that is currently on the building or proposed on the parking lot. We also reviewed the landscaping and screening. The applicant is proposing not to make significant changes to the existing landscaping outside of the general maintenance and minor enhancements. We did note in our report that there were 2 areas where new landscaping should be considered. It was recommended that new deciduous trees be planted in the proposed islands along the south side of the building. The applicant did revise the plans to include a tree in the larger of the islands. We noted that they are taking down a couple of trees in that area, and it would probably be good to include multiple trees in that area, whether they're in the islands or directly adjacent to the back of the curb. I do think it would be appropriate to put back a couple of trees in that particular area. And then the city noted that the applicant is proposing a new trash enclosure. There is vegetation between the trash enclosure and the adjacent residential properties. However, the city did note that outside of a combination of just taller ornamental grasses, the applicant might want to include some larger evergreen trees or shrubs to more adequately screen the perimeter of that enclosure area, or just to provide some break or buffer along that particular area. The applicant hasn't made that particular revision. I'd be looking for Planning Commission direction as it relates to that. And then we've talked about the wooden fence that's located along the east property line previously. That fence, I think, is partially down and is in disrepair, and the applicant is proposing to replace that fence with a similar cedar board-on-board type fence that would be 6 feet in height, so it would match what is there. We have talked about whether that's the right height for that fence in the past, or whether or not some taller fence might be required or appropriate for that particular location. I also noted, as related to the fencing, the applicant is proposing a 6-foot ornamental fence that would screen in the outdoor courtyard area in this particular location. That would be a locked and secured fence that would be associated with the use of the property and the memory care piece. So that would be, that's part of the fence proposal that they have in front of the city. The applicant has not made an application relating to signage. Any change in signage would need to meet the ordinance requirements. They have noted that they would obviously be preparing an updated signage package for that building. And then as it relates to stormwater and engineering, the city's engineer did review and provided comments. The applicant did review those comments and provided a response. There are a couple of minor comments that were noted with the plans. One of the things that we noted is that the city's redoing Wyman and Bryant, and with those changes, the applicant would be tying into those improvements. And so there was really just some minor details that would need to be finalized by the applicant, but there's no major concerns relating to the proposed parking or the proposed exterior site improvements. The city then also has had quite a few discussions relating to fire and public safety. as it relates to the use of this building as well as the use of other similar facilities within the city. As Planning Commission knows, that was a point of discussion on the last couple of applications that have come before the city. And we are still in the process of working through what that looks like with the applicant. Both Maple Plain Fire and West Hennepin Public Safety have met with the applicant, have met with staff, and are working on obtaining additional data and information relating to the level of service required for similar facilities that are managed or operated by the applicants. And that is an ongoing process. I would note that the realm of that information and the discussion around the level of service for public safety really lies with the council, and that will be that information will be fully vetted prior to the council considering any recommendation by the Planning Commission. But as you know, our kind of scope is land use and site and planning. And so while we are working on that, and I want to note that, we don't have kind of a finalized report, so to speak, that will go to council. I would note in the conditions that are included with the packet, if the Planning Commission were to recommend approval, one of the conditions is that the applicant would be required to enter into an agreement with the city that would memorialize the conditions of approval and service charges for emergency services. So that is a kind of a new element that we're introducing. That would be considered by the city council, but I just want to point that out. So I do have at least the language. We don't have that agreement in place, but that's one of the things that we're talking about with the applicant, should this advance to the city council. So it's a high-level overview of the site plan proposed use. The applicant obviously provided a bigger narrative. We also provided information in the packet relating to some of their other facilities and what they intend to operate. And I can let the Planning Commission discuss that or if they have questions of the applicant specifically. And then with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions relating to the proposed use or the proposed site plan and building renovations.
Thank you, Mark. With that, I need a motion to open the public hearing.
I'll make the motion to open the public hearing.
Stefan makes a motion to open the public hearing. Can I get a second?
I'll second that motion.
Adam seconds the motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say the same. Ayes have it 4-0. So the public hearing is now open. It is 7:14 p.m. And again, we have opened this public floor. Please be aware we will welcome your input. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to share their comments. Please state your name and address for the record before speaking. And in all honesty, I have one person who completed a form, so that is the only person that will be able to speak in front of the podium. Amy Stefaniak, I think I said you're wrong. Stefaniak? Stefaniak, okay. So yeah, please state your name and your address, and then
Amy Stefaniak, 5444 Bryant Street. My main concern is the road, obviously. I don't believe that it is, I don't know, if it's a 4-ton road?
Yep.
So it's rated as a 4-ton, and still concerned like we were from the last 2 times with the larger vehicles coming and going. And so I don't know if anybody wants to discuss anything about that, if anybody's even considered that.
I have similar concerns. I guess, I
thank
know
you,
it's
Amy.
Public forum, but we allowed to talk now, or should we wait till?
You should close.
I got one more thing here, so, Yep, I gotta read in an email we received from, a resident. It is coming from, I believe it's Mary Jo and Ron. I do not have their address, but they live adjacent to the, Haven Homes area. She regrets that she's unable to attend the meeting tonight, Thursday, March 6th, so she emailed our thoughts. These are our reasons/concerns. Changing the zoning and giving Comfort Haven a CUP goes against the city's comprehensive plan. What is a comprehensive plan for if not to hold the city to their vision? Neighborhoods are not conducive to semi-trailer trucks driving by, so I think we've heard that already a couple of times. Bryant Street had to be rebuilt 35 years, partially due to these big vehicles using it. It cost each lot owner 17 grand or 28,000 if opting for the 20-year plan to pay for the new street for residential use, not commercial use. Will the city help us out when we must rebuild the road again in 35 years? Emergency vehicles speeding through the neighborhood multiple times per week are not conducive to a neighborhood, even if the sirens are turning off. Do other neighborhoods in the city have a commercial building sitting in the middle of it? CUPs need to be monitored. Does the city need to add to their workload? What happens if this business does not make it and then we have to go through this again in 3 or 5 or 10 years from now? Now is the time to do the right thing. It has been said that the old nursing home was a good neighbor by people who did not live by it. We have lived here for 47 years and have a different opinion about the old nursing home being a good neighbor. We had traffic congestion when they had special events. We had loud music due to some of their outdoor events. We had patients lost. We had family members knocking on our doors for directions and all the extra delivery trucks. And then lastly, they have stated here speeding by employees in a residential neighborhood. We understand the desire to do something with the rundown, boarded up building, but that is Haven Homes' problem. They made the choice to vacate the building. They can make the decision to reduce the price of the property and thus attract builders, developers that would build housing which is needed in Maple Plain. We do not need more nursing home beds. Thanks for, in quotes, listening, and we plan to be at the March 24th City Council meeting. See you then. Ron and Mary Jo Steffenhagen. With that, I need a motion to close the public hearing.
Jacob, I thought I filled the form out, but I filled in for public sign-in. Is now the time for me to speak, or will there be another time?
Nope, that'll be after, and if the commission has questions.
Thank you.
So yeah, I need a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Stefan makes the motion. Do I get a second?
Second.
Mike seconds the motion. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say the same. Ayes have it 4-0. The public hearing is closed as of 7:19 p.m. Okay, Commission. What questions do we have? I guess the owner or applicant is here to, sure, okay. Do we want to hear from them at all, or, yeah?
Yes.
Please approach the podium, state your name and your address, and we'd be happy to hear from you.
Hi, my name is John Gleisner. My address 4207 Quaker Trail, Prior Lake, Minnesota. And I would be one of the owners of the new facility with my business partner, Mike Von Bank. So thank you for the good presentation and very detailed. So we've been very, very proactive on reading the previous minutes, the previous complaints. What can we do better than the previous applicants? And we're very welcoming to any recommendations that you have. And then with the residents, same thing. If there's going to be an issue or a problem, both of us are very hands-on. We very proactive in reaching out to people. Last week we met with Rick Dennison and Gary Krols for the fire and police. Had a great conversation about potential problems. Very helpful for both of us, and we feel very confident. And again, we're very open to any suggestions that people would have to make this a win-win for everybody. We both live local, so you'll see us up here a lot. If there's any issues, we'll be up here to take care of anything that's a challenge. but we for sure welcome anything.
Quick question for you. It's come up again tonight. Thank you very much for speaking. But the heavy vehicles, the semi-trucks, what are we talking about? How do
I think just garbage will be once a week, and food delivery probably once a week. So twice a week, one for garbage, one for food. Besides that, there wouldn't be any heavy vehicle traffic.
I think that-
So in those deliveries, are they like huge semi-trailers, or are they just kind of a,
Food
you know,
service.
U-Haul sort of a deal?
Food service trucks, so not necessarily the semis, the traditional truck, but again, once a week for food deliveries for that part.
So that one, I know in other uses, we've had concerns with that because of the semis and all the rest of it, but that's why I asked the question, to try to
Right.
qualify that. It doesn't sound like it's any more than what goes down my neighborhood street, the garbage trucks.
And now with the road,
Maybe the main thing is a tractor trailer food service that used to,
Sounds like that's not what he's doing.
yeah, and if it would be the smaller one, just so they can axle and turn back in, but now with
don't-
us putting the
but,
road going all the
yeah,
way
they
through.
don't make the turns there. Like I live in the neighborhood, like
Right,
around Wyman, a tractor trailer can't make that turn without going over the curb and gutter.
so then they would have to use a
Turning it-
different,
Yeah, so I think in that respect, I would look to the city to limit in their conditional use to deliveries by box truck only, like, which I know it can be done. It's, other cities do that.
I would also look to the city to make sure the road is, new road is designed to accommodate the type of trucks that are expected.
Correct. I would think that the garbage truck is
It's about
probably your biggest
heaviest.
Yeah.
vehicle coming up and down that road, and they come up with recycling trucks behind it twice a week. I mean, once a week, but two
Yeah,
trucks.
two trucks.
Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, that part, when I look at the plan, one of the things I'm intrigued with is, I know in the past, we've had concerns with the amount of traffic or where the traffic goes, where the traffic parks, are we on the street? By nature, that was a narrow road. You know, it's for
Still is,
whatever
yeah.
reason, it's still a narrow road, and so having parking there. So I'm encouraged to see the additional parking to the south and the enhancement of the parking, I guess, to the east, along the east side of the building. So you're proposing complete off-site parking,
correct,
nothing on the roads, nothing on the street,
Yeah,
correct.
There's never been parking proposed on the roads here, but
right?
this is what they did is they removed the parking spots that would face directly into the homeowners to the east to eliminate the headlights
right.
shining in their
Yep.
windows, yeah.
Right.
I know it's not necessarily in the planning commission's preview, but you know, one of the big issues before was emergency services. And I know you haven't finished the discussions or, you know, the plan for that, but we have residents here, might be interested, is there anything you could share about that, and how you might?
Yeah, for sure.
Might be
Mike
expected.
Von Bank, he owns two other facilities, so he can share his numbers with his existing facilities on that, would be helpful.
Okay. Yep. Name and address?
My name's Mike Von Bank, and 2006 Wild Street in Elko, New Market, Minnesota.
Thank you.
So yeah, I have two buildings, one in Montgomery, Minnesota, one in Waterville. Very not as big as this facility here, a 39 unit, a 49 unit. And talking with both Rick and Gary, that was a concern. And ironically, back in 2007, when I opened up our first building in Waterville, that one is a business that's connected to half commercial and half residential, is where that property is located. So many concerns, especially with the size and having the volunteer firefighters, concerns with the police calls. That's one of the things I brought up to Rick, which he obviously took note of the, we had an issue back in 2007, so 17 years ago, with, it was really coming down to proper staffing is where we needed assist, and I'm embarrassed to say that, but our staffing wasn't proper where we need to have assist to help get our residents back into bed. It was to a point where we actually were getting a service fee. Well, that obviously didn't last very long after we needed their assistance, and we obviously fixed that with the proper staffing. Gary did have a conversation with Waterville. So he was, I believe you are still in getting updated information, because the information we provided, I think, is 6 months old. So he wanted to get the most recent reports to cover the last 6 months. But that is obviously a concern, of ours for proper staffing, where we're not burdening the firefighters, police officers, and things like that. It's the main reason why we met with them, is to make sure we're not a burden to just useless calls. Obviously, they said, which was great information, emergencies, definitely call 911 and they'll be there. So that has been something that we wanted to address. Obviously, Marissa over here is part of operations, and two persons assist getting grandma and grandpa or any of the residents back into the bedroom is not going to be an issue, unless obviously it is an emergency and we need to call 911 for a transfer to the hospital.
Quick question for you, follow up with that. So in the past, we've had situations, programs coming in here where they have been very understaffed. Can you share with us what kind of residents, and what kind of staffing, what kind of people are going to be staffing this in a 24-hour period?
Yeah, so the typical LPN, CNA type of assistance, so that's the most important thing is having the proper ratios. So we if you want to come on up here real quick, or can we bring her up, operator management?
Yes.
Forgive me for saying, but this does not fall under the purview of planning.
Okay.
We are here tonight to talk about the CUP, the plans. I think that we should stick to that. The public safety portion can happen with the city council meeting.
Noted, and I agree with that. It is a big topic because we had a whole special session on it last time that included both city council and planning commission. So it sounds like you're working with the city, and it's a part of the condition, is what I hear, is that we need to have a full review of the public safety in order for things to proceed. So, or in one direction or not. So, our role here is related to more land use than it is public safety. So I think we should focus on that in particular. So, yeah.
That's good. Okay.
Appreciate your comments and your offering of information. So, yeah.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Any other questions not related to or unrelated to safety and public fire?
Have the 2 or 3, like it's kind of 2 and then a lean-to storage units been discussed in your conversations? I didn't see any notes on whether those would be demoed or repaired or.
The two garages would be re-sided and revamped. The one that's way on the bottom would be removed completely. That's a little bit more dilapidated. But the other two would have siding that would match the existing building.
Okay.
They're generally in good shape, just the siding and roof is poor that we would redo on those.
Okay, in that little like kind of like shed, what's called shed, the lean-to portion, is that part of that structure, or is it that, does that get removed? I don't.
Those get removed also, yes. Yep, good catch. And then
And the bit, that one there. Okay.
And,
But the 2 garages are staying.
correct.
Garages would
be Okay. Gotcha.
Would be recited.
how far down or was the fence planned to be? I see wood fence there. Like how far south is that planned to be reconstructed to?
So the proposal that they had was just to match with the existing, so install wood fence to match the existing. So it'd just be to where the edge of the wood fence is, and then it starts the chain link. And is that right here at this corner where that starts, I think?
I think with the trash moving down there, it'd be nice to have that fence extend all the way down at least to just past the trash receptacle,
Okay.
and still have some of the shrubs around, just because you're gonna have more like headlights coming in from that way in the drive, and then also the trash truck. And so you're not seeing or put a trash enclosure around it, but.
They do have a trash enclosure around it.
Okay.
And they gave us the details for that. It's a full opaque enclosure. But I think the comment to bring the fence down to at least the south side of the
Yeah, 'cause
proposed
so you're
parking
gonna
for
get the
headlights and all
coming
of that.
down, Yeah.
And I'd have to look, I can't remember exactly where it ends, right in here. And then that chain link starts up, but, we can make sure that extends all the way, or that could be a comment or a condition that we would include.
I think some shrubs or landscaping on the kind of south side of that angle would be good too for headlights heading south.
So you're saying in this area here?
Yeah, just to block headlights for then the houses face to the south, so you're not,
Good point.
yeah.
Well, I see some improvements here from the last plan we saw, was it a year ago? We talked about this drive-through type of design, and I think that works well on a number of reasons. It prevents the garbage trucks from backing up a long distance to get to the dumpster. They can drive through and just have a short backup rather than a long one. It also allows employees to enter into the parking lot without having to drive further into the neighborhood. So I think there's less disruption in the neighborhood. And if there was any parking on the street, I'm not sure if there was, but it would should eliminate that if there was. I applaud the efforts to improve the exterior and the roof of the building and the repaving. All those improvements are duly noted. I think you're also responsive in moving the parking lot further away from the east property line. I think 10 feet is a good distance to provide room for a fence, which I would prefer to be taller than 6 feet. I think 8 feet is probably more appropriate next to this sort of site, and opportunity for some landscaping in there as well. I also wanted to mention, since I'm a tree guy, there was a couple trees being removed, well, a number of trees being removed, but two
Four
on,
mature trees, I think.
a couple of mature trees on the north side of the new parking lot, that were, one that's kind of right along the edge of the limits of construction, which it looks like, looking at the grading plan, that's probably more of a fill condition rather than a cut. So a little bit of fill on top of those roots, and the tree looks like to be 9-10 feet away from the curb. I think it's worth trying to save that tree. Likewise, there's another maple that's closer to the street that was to be removed. That one's closer to the curb, but again, I would suggest, I guess, I'm not the designer, but if you did eliminate the first parking stall, you'd have plenty of room, I think, for leaving that tree as well. It's a sugar maple, it's a higher value tree. Well, it says maple, I'm not sure what kind of maple it is.
This one here.
Yeah, the 20 incher, yeah. So if that first stall could be eliminated, thus pushing the curb further east, you'd have plenty of room, I think, to be able to keep that tree. Better to keep these large mature trees than plant a bunch of young ones, which will take a long time to grow up and, may not all make it. So I'd make that suggestion. And as I mentioned before, I think in terms of the street abuse, we already talked that it probably isn't gonna get any more abuse than, or much more abuse than it would be in a normal situation. But I would ask that the city take a look at the specifications on the road design to make sure that can accommodate the weight of the traffic that's might be expected with this. Actually, 35 years is probably a good lifespan for a street, so, although it's probably been bad for a while. So that's all the comments I have.
I think, the other thing would be limiting areas of smoking to not be along
Fence line.
the fence line.
We would have policies for designated areas that would not be by the fence from the previous comments.
And then I think another thing is the south side of the property does flood, on a wet year or every spring, like improving the drainage, since if you can tie that into the storm, I don't know if a drain tile or something kind of from the low spot. Or there's that, I don't know if that invert is a drain going into that side of the property or going away that's not working.
I think we had addressed that issue with the city engineer relating to the road plans when we looked at it the last time, and they noted that they anticipate that drainage area to potentially be somewhat improved just as a result of the road project, but that if you look at the overall drainage, if you start to shift that water, you're going to impact the residential properties because it really is a pond. I mean, it's not labeled or designated, but if you look at the area, all the residential properties around it really rely on that to be there because it's the low spot in that
If
neighborhood.
they could tie it into the storm. to
Yeah, is this an
drain it.
opportunity to tie it in the
Yeah.
storm or
Well-
put in drain tile?
That's what we talked about, is that right now the road drains into that, but with the improvements, that portion won't drain into that, so they are gonna divert and capture some of that water, so.
Yeah.
I know there's drain tile, at least on my street, there was drain tile proposed where needed and people could tie in. There's some
It's
drains to it.
fairly high, right along, I live in Wyman there, so like I added some in my property and tied it in, but,
So if there's an opportunity to improve flooding by either
Yeah.
putting a structure
it really
or,
impacts the
or drain
three
tile
houses
into
to
the
the
street.
south of them, yeah. Yeah, just south of there, where it bends there, there's an invert, I don't know if that's in water coming out from the current parking, or if it's a drain going somewhere.
Which,
It's in the
where it
existing
bends here, you mean?
Yeah. There was if it's this plan or the other one, you can see it on the existing line work.
Oh, right here.
Yeah, like I don't know if that's water draining into that area from the parking in the property, or if it's draining out of the property, but it's very old. There's a little concrete inlet there, or outlet. It's kind of buried.
Yeah, I think it's a good comment. I'll pass that on to the engineer. I can't remember if they addressed that. That pipe is gonna get impacted by that parking lot, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't show where that pipe ends. That just shows like a little piece of drain pipe that goes one way there.
Yeah, I couldn't tell if it was coming from their existing parking and out there and just dumping the
Looks
water.
like it,
Yeah,
looks like it probably would, yeah.
It would dump into that low spot.
so then like, instead of dumping that water to capture it into the storm to,
Well, now that whole parking lot, if you look at it, is it's gonna grade to the curb and then, it would grade down and out to the street.
yeah, the storm inlet and the.
And then the
street side
storm
house
inlet.
there, Yeah,
Yeah. Which is gonna reduce again the
Yeah.
water that's getting down into that south area.
All right.
So from a site plan perspective, I think this is a good plan from should it be done? Is this the best use for this particular site? I think that is a bigger question for the city council.
And I'll just note for planning commission, I mean, we're talking about a conditional use permit. In the report, we note the conditions. We note the criteria for the conditional use permit. And really, you know, when we set this up, we said assisted living facilities are a conditional use within the R1 zoning district. They have to have a minimum lot size of 2.5 acres. That's a baseline. This is obviously one of the few sites that meets that in the R1. They have a maximum assembly size within the facility or outdoors that is no greater than 50 non-residents and employees. So assemblies are limited. They won't have the ability to do larger assemblies than that. They have to have a site plan that's fully in compliance. They must also operate under the licensure requirements of the state at all times. And then the use of the facility shall not be injurious or create a nuisance to adjoining neighborhoods. And then we talk about assisted living facilities with memory care can be approved by the city council as a part of the conditional use permit. So those are like the base level criteria that they have to meet. And then within our ordinance, we have criteria that are considered for conditional uses. Essentially that the use of the property cannot take away reasonable use and enjoyment of surrounding properties. I mean, that's our kind of overarching theme for conditional uses. Or we find that the use and or its potential impacts are adequately mitigated, right? And so that would be things like noise, traffic, sightlines, aesthetics, things of that nature that we would be able to then either add conditions to the approval or, you know, require modifications. So that's the basis or the lens that we're looking through to determine, does this meet those criteria or have they satisfactorily mitigated issues that we identified? So that's what we're really charged with looking at. Where this is different than past uses is, one, we changed our ordinance so that we could create the criteria that we had. So we're not asking for any kind of change in ordinance. They're asking just now, based on the criteria that we established, they're suggesting they meet it, and we have to find that if we think that. The public safety piece is a piece that, you know, really comes into play. Council obviously has that side of it in addition to what you recommend to review and look at. And we're still working through that, and that's a major piece. I mean, that was really what stopped the last proposal from going through, was their inability to cure the public safety issue.
Yeah, I mean, I think they just looked at, you know, and they did their research of looking at prior conversations related to other applicants and went down the list of like, okay, this is what the people are saying. How can we mitigate that risk or mitigate that injurious enjoyment? And this is what they came up with. So, you know, that was the one thing that I noticed, is that they're coming forward and saying like, okay, we've heard the opinions of prior conversations, and this is what we're doing to mitigate those opinions. So there's a point at which, when you consider street traffic, you can't control how fast people drive down streets, you know, unless you're talking about adding road speed humps and speed bumps and stuff like that. So, and frankly, people speed down Joyce Street, they speed down Bryant, maybe not so much Wyman because it does kind of curve and it's a very short Wyman.
We'll drive fast down.
But yeah, people are already driving fast down these neighborhood streets. So, you know, the only way we stop that is other means. So
Enforcement.
yeah. But yeah, with that, if there's no further discussion or conversation, I need a motion related to this application.
Thank you.
Thanks, fellas.
Thank you.
And just to kind of reiterate some of the things we talked about condition to extend the wood fence beyond the trash enclosure and maybe a little bit farther. We talked about introducing some more landscaping or trying to preserve a couple of the trees that were around the area.
Drainage.
Yep, drainage on the south side to try to mitigate as much water as possible.
I'd also recommend the city to limit delivery trucks to be box trucks and not semi-tractor trailers, and I don't know if there's any way of enforcing like a penalty or fines if bigger trucks do are used for deliveries? I don't know.
I think if we added a condition that service or delivery vehicles had to be no greater than and we'd have to
A certain
define this, length or axle or whatever. I think we certainly add that condition, and then the penalty for that is the violation of the conditional use permit, and we have that structure already, so I think that's
Okay.
appropriate, that we would just, keep that, the language that's proposed in there, but the condition would be to limit the size of delivery vehicles to no greater than, and we'll define that between now and council. I think I understand the intent of that condition.
And I guess for that, how would that be enforced?
It would be if we were to see,
Yeah,
Complaint.
because I mean, like if a neighbor
report.
calls
I mean,
and
we,
said,
yeah, if a neighbor called, then we would inspect or investigate,
Okay.
right? And then we would probably talk to the owners and say, hey, we were told that there was a vehicle, and we'd have to. I mean, it's not going to be we're going to just one call and it's a violation. We'd have to go, but that's how we do any of the investigation we do on conditional uses. Is if somebody were to complain, or we saw it, or there was an issue that was presented, we would investigate that and then try to determine, are they in compliance or in violation? And if they're in violation, we would cite them for being in violation. We have a 3-strike type of policy with our conditional uses, and so that, yes, it's definitely city enforcement, but it's common or typical to what we do.
Yeah, because currently, like the Wyman to Bryant curve, like a tractor trailer can't make that turn without running over the curb.
So there would be
Can't-
some
They
visual.
can't get into the current property without going over the curb. And even if they were to back in and go north, out the road straight north to make the turn on West Main, you can't make that turn with a tractor trailer without driving off the road.
Sure, yeah,
So,
Sort of restricts itself to
Yeah.
a degree.
yeah.
and that's where, like, there was lots of property damage due to the previous use.
Those agreements and contracts can be set up by the owners, managers with their suppliers,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't happen.
So Chair, if I could.
Sure.
Just try to capture.
Yep.
The conditions that I have noted, and I think, Chair, you noted most of these, but I was just gonna go over that. So we'd limit the type of vehicles that would be permitted for delivery. We would reinforce that there's no off-site parking permitted. That's by way of our roads anyway, but just let's put it in there, because we talked about it. We would recommend that the wooden fence be extended to at least the south side of the proposed new parking southern boundary, is what I wrote. We would ask the applicant to add screening, which would include evergreen, some mixture of evergreen, to the, what I call the triangle, or the proposed new south side of the parking lot to block headlights coming into the site from Wyman. We would recommend, and I would ask if this is correct, that the wooden fence be 8 feet tall, not 6 feet tall, on that eastern border. We would also recommend that some additional landscaping be added to that eastern property line adjacent to the existing fence, just to soften that. We would ask the applicant to consider, and we would have to look at the grades to save the 20-inch maple near the edge of Wyman by moving or eliminating one of the parking spaces in that first stall. We would recommend that a condition be added that limits the outside smoking to be internal to the site in designated areas and away from the residential property lines.
Was that something that the city would approve? Like
Well, you'd be
We couldn't
recommending,
approve,
we'd
like,
be,
city
all of these would be
yeah.
conditions proposed.
okay,
If that,
like the location would be approved by the,
that the location be
like a
approved.
defined area that's.
Okay, so we would say that the applicant would actually define the areas on the plan, and we would approve those
Yeah.
designated.
Yeah, that way we have a plan, so if there is complaints or nuisance, we can.
That's a good point.
You know, an enforcement of,
Yeah, I like that.
people are outside of a certain area.
Yeah, so it would be part of the approved plan
Yeah.
set.
Yeah,
And then we would recommend that they review the stormwater drainage to the south area and look for opportunities to incorporate it into the street project, or the new street project, just to reduce the amount of runoff in that area. Those are the ones that I had, if there's others, but if,
You can add to the, your comment about the existing trees, there was the 20-inch tree on the north side as well. And to take a look at the two trees on the south side too, they're right along the edge of the limits of construction. They're outside the curb, so if,
The one tree's held together by chains. That like,
by chains.
yeah, it's like
Chains.
bolted together, the walnut tree.
Oh, it's
that's,
pretty,
Yeah.
that's the one on the north side.
Yeah, that one, I think,
it's pretty bad shape.
yeah,
Oh, okay.
that one
That's a
should be
wal-
replaced, yeah.
That's a walnut?
Yeah,
It is a walnut, yeah.
there's a chain binder, like, with the trees growing around, holding it together, yeah.
Just take a look at the trees and see
Yeah.
what you can.
Yep.
Okay. I added that.
Yeah,
We'll look at those 3 additional trees as well.
I agree on the maple tree, if we could save that one, that would be nice, that's a nice tree.
Okay, well, with that, I don't want to repeat everything that was stated, but pretty much, we're looking for a motion to approve or deny, whichever, the application submitted by Comfort Haven with the conditions as stated by the city or noted by the city, along with the additional recommendations that the Planning Commission has made here during this meeting. Does that kind of encompass it
That's
all? Okay.
It's perfect, it's perfect.
So can I get a motion for that?
I'll make that motion.
Stefan makes that motion. Clarification, to approve or deny?
To recommend approval.
Okay, we have a motion from Stefan to recommend approval. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Mike seconds the motion. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say the same. Hearing none, ayes have it 4-0.
And I would just note to the residents that are here to just watch or contact the city to make sure you can track it or follow when it will go to city council. It's not a guarantee that this goes to city council on the 24th. It's intended to, but there's some other stuff that has to happen prior to that happening. So just so you're aware, you should check with the city to make sure you know what date it will go to council. But
Yes, because that is also a time when you can make your voices heard if you have other opinions to share. So, with that, that concludes second item of new business today. We are now on the area of other business. Does anybody have any other business to?
I guess, is there any update on December's meeting with the apartment site plan? Or what, if that's still moving forward, or what happened there?
We got an extension from the applicant. It's indefinite. We're kind of monitoring where they are. They kind of pulled back on moving forward at this point. They've told me that they still intend to move forward with the application. They're just holding. I think a lot of projects are in a
Yeah.
similar. I guess I just know for planning. We're bringing another proposal forward for the downtown redevelopment site to the EDA next week. We've got another group that's interested in trying to move forward, so that's something that we're hoping to try to advance and see. We also have a couple other new projects that I think are going to come up and be in front of us this Q2 probably. And so stay tuned. We've got a couple other business or developments coming in, but the downtown is obviously one that we're hoping we can move forward with this new development group and see if we can get that project to go. And then obviously we're Quick Trip has been a good project to come forward. So.
Jacob, one question for you. We had a prior planning commissioner who is no longer listed as being a commissioner. Mardell. I didn't learn about that until today, so I just want to kind of curious as to what had gone on there.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. Yes, Mardell had given us her resignation. She's enjoyed her time on the Planning Commission, just didn't have the time to do it anymore. I did send her a thank you card like I did with Barb
Mhm.
when she left as well. I apologize that we did not communicate that to you. Dropped the ball on that, but
We'd applaud 20 years of service and 4 years.
Can we make a motion?
I was gonna say, I need a motion to formally recognize and thank you to Mardell for her commitment to our city and the planning commission. So can I get a motion for that?
Definitely.
I got a motion from Stefan. Can I get a second?
Second that.
Adam seconds the motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say the same. Hearing none, ayes have it, 4-0. Thank you, Mardell, for your service. We really appreciate it. Long time coming, and we hope you enjoy the extra time you have now. I mean, may not have been much, but time is time. So time is money, as they say. So, but thank you. And with that, any other business that anyone would like to ask about, share, or otherwise, I'll take a motion for adjournment.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Adam motions to adjourn the meeting. Can I get a second?
I'll second that.
Mike seconds that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say the same. Hearing none, ayes have it, 4-0. The Planning Commission meeting for Thursday, March 6th is adjourned at 7:57. Thank you, everyone.
Well, or why?